This is another podcast where we're talking about the people of Penang. That's right. We decided that, people are interesting. So my name is Mo Nazrul from Penang Hidden Gems, and I kind of knocked that. Eugene, what's up, man?
I'm Eugene, and today we have a very interesting guest with us today. Rexy Prakash Chacko, avid explorer, orchid enthusiast, and environmental advocate.
So this is what he prepared for before we started rolling, right?
Yeah.
Because I was like, who's gonna do the introduction? You're just like, I'm gonna do it. Like, I was like, wow, okay, this guy's got an angle. What's happening, Eugene?
Well, actually, I sent him another one, and this is his actual words.
What were his actual words?
It was more dramatic. I had another one.
Really?
Yeah, but he
it's like one
preferred
of those
another one.
Tenacious D moments. Is like, from the depths of the mountains of Valhalla.
Yeah, so Rexy, thank you very much for coming.
Oh, my pleasure. My
Yes.
pleasure to be here and to be on this podcast as well.
So, I got some interesting stuff here that we will talk about later. Rexy is also an author.
Wait. Also an author,
Yeah.
or he is an author?
He is, on
You
top
know,
of many other things.
I'm only like this because Eugene made me like this.
Yes.
No, I'm kidding. I'm just joking. No.
Yes.
No, but it has been a real pleasure. I mean, and the thing is, one thing I love about this experience with the podcast is like you really get to know people. Are you feeling comfortable?
Yeah, I'm good. Yeah.
Okay, cool. That's my like one requirement from the guest is like, I just need you to be comfortable. You're in a safe space. We're not gonna. Right, Eugene? We're not gonna hurt him in any way.
I got my credit.
Oh my God, I did. so yeah, as you can see, me and Eugene, this is one of the reasons why I love working with Eugene. We're so alike yet so different. Same, different, but still the same. It's like a yin and yang. But in terms of like your books and stuff like that, and like how did you roll into that? Because everybody rolls into their profession of choice. Mostly by accident. Very few premeditated. And if it was premeditated, it's all of the parents.
Oh, yeah. I certainly agree with that. In fact, that was what I wanted to say, but you've already said it before me. So how it started was about 2004, 2003, I reckon.
Yeah.
When I was still in primary school. My dad decided on this idea of going up to Mount Kinabalu. And he wanted to bring the whole family to Mount Kinabalu, So with kids in primary, this is something very ambitious.
Yeah.
Just to look at it or actually scale
No,
it?
scale
Wow.
mountain. So what we started doing was you have to prepare for that whole expedition. So we started going up Penang Hill. So along the way, what happened was rather than just training, it actually became a hobby. It became almost like an obsession that every Saturday we were up in the hills. And along the way, in order to explore more trails, we got this nature trails book, which was produced by the MNS in 1999. And I used to think to myself, this guidebook is so helpful for me. I'm discovering so many new places on Penang just primarily because of this book.
Oh, yeah, one of my favorites too is there are two editions, right? The earlier one.
Yeah,
and
the
later
earlier one. Yeah. I think the earlier one is now.
Yeah.
I think both are now collector's items.
collector's items,
You
yes.
barely get any copies these
It's
days.
beautifully hand-drawn maps.
Oh yeah.
Wait, hand-drawn maps?
Yes.
Yeah.
Like on purpose? Or is this like because technology?
Oh, no.
Yeah, I reckon
you didn't
it's-
have the technology.
Oh, okay. Because I thought they had Illustrator, Photoshop, whatever, whatnot, right? And the guy was just like, I just decide to do it. Because that seems to be where AI is heading, right? Like for me,
Yeah.
everybody's like, oh, AI is replacing us. It's like, technically it's replacing the mundane work that you do in your profession, right? But the idea is that, yeah, you're an artist, but there will come a point where originally non-AI generated art will be so valuable.
Oh,
and
yeah,
I'm so
certainly.
happy for that day. Because I'm looking forward to it. Because for me, right, that means that I can just take a canvas, draw a line, and non-AI generated 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So Rexy, you're an engineer, right?
Yeah, I'm an engineer by profession. Yeah.
What kind of engineering? You may share a little bit your day job.
So I studied electronics and communications, and right now I work as sort of you could say an RF engineer. Yeah, electronics engineer.
Radio frequency, right?
Radio frequency. Yeah.
Wow. So
So it's something which is very disconnected from whatever which was shown just now. But I reckon it's also something that we kind of lose in this generation where we kind of put people in boxes where, okay, he's an engineer, these are the kind of things that people
Wow.
do. But if you look in times before, even in colonial times, personalities who have come to Penang, you see they are both surgeons at the same time, botanists, and probably
Yes,
even
yes.
historians.
actually, a lot of the books,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
you're like,
yeah.
I'm the captain of the ship, but yet I paint. equally
Exactly,
so. You
yeah.
know? And then you have this beautiful. Actually, I'm glad. Oh wow, that is a topic I never thought we would delve into. So you're both. You're a man of multiple professions. You're like a Renaissance man, right?
Oh,
yes.
And then once upon a time, being a Renaissance man, that you had to be skilled in multiple sets of things like art, history, science, mathematics.
Yeah.
And you also had to be able to fence, and you had to fire a musket, and you also had to be a qualified horse rider and a general. Because aristocrats only were
Or in the
there.
19th century, they would call it a polymath, somebody who does many things by then.
Polymath. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
You know, so that's the thing. You know, I'm glad that you brought it up. That people have been so used to being like in a sphere or bubbled in and stuff like that. You know, and because we started off saying, "Oh, he's an author," it's like, no way he could be an engineer. No, absolute way. So what?
Yeah.
So as an engineer, as an electrical engineer, is it specifically radio waves?
No,
radio waves?
actually, I deal more with audio. Yeah,
In general.
in general, but
So-
the electrical part of audio.
So, like, guide us through the thought processes of an electrical engineer turned author. Like, okay, so when you look at something, how much planning does it go into, like, say, building this studio, theoretically?
Okay, it's quite different, but probably one of the things about engineering that really helped me in this journey of writing books is it gives you a very set thought process of where do you start, where do you end, and also how do you plan. What are the information that people find important while they go hiking? I mean, like if you were to just say it's a beautiful trail, everyone knows it's a beautiful trail, but you need to have some meat into it. What are the things that you can see, and what are the viewpoints or probably landmarks along the way? Then it becomes something useful. So I reckon this kind of perspective. Of course, hiking was one of the things that got me that perspective.
I think the word is
But
engineering thinking.
yeah, it's also engineering design thinking, where you design something where your customer or the hiker wants to use.
Yeah, that's pretty cool because, like, you're trying to say that engineering goes beyond like machines. Because when you think
certainly.
engineer, thinking like engines, but it's actually. I wouldn't want to say manipulate. Manipulate is I just can't think of a better word to say. But like you manipulate certain situations to go in a certain way. Like for example, like you're saying hiking, right? You're trying to get people to see what you see because you've had this profound experience with a family member, your father, right?
Yeah,
who
father,
got you hiking and stuff like that. So the way to do it for you, you're thinking like, okay, put things into context because any hiking trail is a hiking trail. A walk from your bedroom to your kitchen is a hike. But context, like what's in there? There's a lost, forgotten, whatever. You're like, oh my god.
Yeah. In fact, right now the role of these guidebooks have kind of become secondary because we have a lot of hiking apps which are out there. And every person who is hiking on the hills right now, if they are of a younger demographic, they usually have an app. They are probably following someone with an app. But I reckon where a guidebook actually helps is like for a Malaysian audience, they kind of like a lot of pictures. And you have like a huge array of colors. Usually people just buy that book just to see that whole diversity of colors. And I think that is also a way in which you communicate. One of the things that you want people to learn from hiking is like you have this diversity in nature. And hiking is not just about an experience going up a hill in 20 minutes and getting the personal best in timing, but also taking it as a journey where you explore and see the things around you and appreciate them for what they are. Because I think in Malay there is a saying, kalau tak kenal maka tak cinta. If you don't know, you won't love. I mean, like we are taught from school itself that we are supposed to love nature, but how can you love something you don't know? And I think books is one of the ways in which you communicate. I mean, like this is the first medium that probably a person who wants to go hike can refer to. And they will be like, oh yeah, I can see all these flowers and probably some of these animals. And when they get to the trail themselves, then they experience it, And sometimes the joy of seeing something you've seen in the book so many times and seeing it in nature or in situ as it is, it goes beyond just seeing it for the first time and not knowing what it is. Imagine like you've been reading about something for so long and finally you see it in life, in person. Yeah.
Wow.
So this is an experience that I get while researching orchids, because I usually start with the books and read a lot. Okay, it's found in Penang, but you've never seen, never heard of anyone who has seen it. And one day you just hike the trails, and the next thing you know, it's right in front of you. And and you're wondering to yourself, yeah, I've seen this plant in the book, and I'm very certain it's that species because I've seen a drawing of it. But seeing it in real life, it's so much more intriguing, you know.
I love the way that you phrase it because, you know, the way you treat botany and plants and the flora and fauna that you encounter on the hike is similar to how somebody would describe like meeting a famous celebrity along the way.
Oh, yeah,
you know,
certainly,
that
certainly.
shock value, you know.
Yeah.
And I think that's like really beautiful because people forget that, you know, there are amazing things,
Certainly.
out there. And for me, myself, I started to discover only Q3 or Q4 last year on sort of like a health and wellness exploration tour kind of thing, that there were so many things that Malaysia has, in Penang especially, that we were just like, oh, I didn't know at all. You know, that we have herbs that we treat as like weed in our gardens, but like when you research it, like I found out that in my mom's garden, what we thought were weeds were actually like anti-anxiety, painkiller. It's just a ulam.
Yeah.
And the wonderful thing about Penang is somebody actually wrote a book about weeds of Penang here.
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Yes,
that is.
yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
So the weeds aren't actually weeds. They're
Yes,
actually
they're
herbs,
useful,
you know.
yes,
And then, you know, somebody was telling me, it was like, that's why they call it herbicide, not weedicide. I was like, oh my God. Like,
And it's quite a global story. Some of them are foreign species.
Yeah.
From all over the world. How did it get here?
yeah, I mean, because like, I think like, as a location wise, you know, you have a place like Malaya or, you know, like Indonesia, Malaya, Thailand, and then you have these islands. It makes perfect sense that you have a whole bunch of like multinational corporations in the form of privateers, you know, just trying to out monopolize each other. And they were just like, we just happen to have really good land that produce like, you know, uber spicier versions of whatever you like. You plant bell peppers, oh, we're coming out with chili padi, you know, like smaller, but pew, you know. But
Okay.
that's a great way to look at nature, you know, because when I was thinking about like all the things that we have, you know, like, and we did a podcast with Haja, the regional director of deputy regional director of the Northern Office for Tourism Malaysia, and it's nice to have now a whole group of people, yourself included, right, that sees that Malaysia doesn't need a new theme park, doesn't need a new casino,
yeah.
right? That the 130 million year old rainforest and the flora and fauna within itself, just on one darn hill, is like.
And one of the advantages, I mean, it was in the news recently. I mean, Penang hiking is amazing, especially on the island. If we are afraid of getting lost, you cannot get lost. You'll be always on the island.
Yeah, you end up on the other side. You know,
I would disagree with that. You see, I mean, like getting lost in the forest, it happens sometimes,
yes.
but getting lost near a stream, that puts you in a lot of trouble.
Yes,
Wait,
yes.
sometimes getting lost near a stream.
Yeah.
So what happens when you get to areas which are near streams? It tends to get very rocky. So this is due to the water action over like millions of years. They kind of carve out an area between the rocks. And what happens is when you are trying to get across, it's almost impossible because these rocks are pocketed with huge deep holes, and you just don't know where they end, you know. So sometimes it's actually, even if it's safe to get lost as such in Penang, it's always good to have some knowledge of the topography and some geographical knowledge.
And to segue into that, buy Rexy's book.
wait. So as an author, right? Like how much have you seen any success with the books?
One from the Seberang Pride, and there's another one.
I like how Eugene's talking when his microphone's so far
He
away.
didn't pay me to do that. This just are books.
Okay, thanks, Eugene.
You can see Ying over there, like sort of like, oh my God, I'm gonna have such a hard time editing the audio for this one.
Speaking of guidebooks, I think there's a value to it. It's not just about navigation. I mean, GPS now, you have that. The thing is lacking is the context. You know, you don't know what you're seeing. You know how to get there. You know somebody else came at this time.
Exactly.
You know, the altitude, but you don't know the culture and history, which is what's amazing about the trails here. Some of these trails has been around, you know, since like 1794 when they first went up there to build stuff. So it's really a long time ago. And Rexy does a tremendous job.
That's one thing that I wanted to add to that point.
Yeah.
I think Penang hiking is quite unique in the sense that, you know, if you want to experience history, there are trails where you can experience history. So just last week, me and the kind of hikes that I do with Eugene probably 2 or 3 months once are always history related or history oriented.
Oh, of course.
So we went up somewhere in Pai Trubung looking for where the great tree was, and also a bungalow.
The what?
The great tree
The great tree.
Yeah.
One of the great natural personalities of Penang. Maybe you can share a little bit.
Wait, hold up. What?
So the great tree, Eugene told me this, that it's featured on a lot of art, and even in fact a book, the Heritage Trees of Penang. It's on the cover.
Penang has a book just about trees. Can you believe that?
And then we have
Heritage trees, not just normal trees.
Great tree.
Yes.
So this was one of the 3 lions of Penang, meaning that 3 attractions of Penang.
The Victorians call the lions as tourist attractions. The thing you must visit. In Penang, it's all the greats. The Great Hill, the Great Waterfall, and the Great Tree.
Okay, just letting you guys know, this is the first time I'm hearing any of this. Okay, so as like a newbie, guide me through the flow of like, okay, so the great tree, like, is it
So
like...
if you are like a 19th century explorer or visitor to Penang, when you come in, the 3 things that you want to see are these, Penang Hill or Government Hill, the waterfall, both of which are there. But the great tree was an experience that in our generation we couldn't see. In fact, almost 100 years ago, the tree either died or was...
Probably in the 1890s.
1890,
Yeah.
okay. So if you were before 1890s, this was one of those trees that you wanted to see. And it was located just about where the Pai Trubung Road crosses over into Relau.
Oh, snap.
There is a V shape to that col there. So it stood there. And it used to be seen like kilometers away,
And it's called Bukit Susu. And I wonder why it has such a strange name.
Milk Hill?
Because
So many things are going through my head, just letting you
Because
know.
the great tree in Malay, they call it the Pokok Susu on the old maps. Because it's a super tall gelotong tree.
Oh, snap.
A gelotong tree has all this latex, which is actually used as chewing gum at one time.
So it has nothing to do with
Milk,
like,
Bukit
the-
Susu.
like from
The
cow.
wonderful name about, the wonderful thing about Penang place names, it's not there by accident. Somebody didn't name it some milk thing. It's actually...
No, see, that's the thing. That's the thing. Like, the younger self, my younger self, like all this stuff is like, why are the names in, this was when I first came back, right? Why are the names in Malaysia kind of funny? Like, it's like, Pulau Tikus, like Rat Island, as opposed to like in the West, you have like George, whatever, like whatever, it's like after somebody great, although later on I found out that's because the East India Company, they just wanted to go around to get investors. So they purposely named them after royals. It's like, fund this town named after your daughter. And the king is like, ooh, or the queen's like, ooh.
All the Nusantara places are mostly geographical features,
No, that's the thing I love. Because there are clear differences in how we view land. Right? So it is quite obvious that the Western side of things, not all, but most, it seems to be dominated by colonialism and profit, right? As opposed to whether it's not just like those in the Nusantara-ish, like Thailand, Indonesia. I've noticed this with like Polynesians or any colonies within New Guinea and Aboriginal Australia, right? The land has always been based on the features of like Red Rock, Mouse Island, or there's a Temple's Peak, Tanjung Tokyo, or Flower Hill or something, right? So it's more like there's reverence to the land itself, right? And it seems prevalent around mostly Asian cultures, and it seems that in the West, ever since they had a taste of international trade and spices and textiles when they had the Crusades and were kicked out after, Constantinople became Istanbul, you see this drive of the West is just like, I just want more and more. As opposed to the Asians, we're like the coolest party. Even the Arabs wanted to hang out with us, We're just like, the Chinese hanging out with the Indians, with the Nusantara, Indonesian, Thailand, and we're just like, hey, great spices, And then the West is like, knock, knock. And the Arabs like, no, they don't bathe. Don't let them in, Which is true. That's what happened in Malacca. It's like the Arab traders were telling the Sultan, like, don't let the Portuguese, and Cortez was like, never mind. We'll open the doors ourselves. But back to like the land itself, right? So I discovered recently that there are reasons why, theoretically, there are people in the health and wellness circle that were saying that, especially like Penang Hill, and Andrew from the Habitat was telling me that once upon a time, the reason why you have like all these cresses and these pots, like the botanical garden, because when you are sailing for like 8, 12, 15, wherever you're from, like, say a year, theoretically, right?
Okay.
When you come off the boat, right? You need to be reconnected to nature. So that's why you have all these gardens and stuff like that. So sailors would actually go there, and it's sort of like a retreat. And then that's why near the Curtis Crest and the habitat, there are all these 100-year-old trees and stuff that were planted.
Okay.
It was purposely there to recreate. And this also segues into my recent sort of exploration with people in the health and wellness circle, with like forest bathing and all these really awesome things. There's this theory that I've gotten from both sides of the science and both of health and wellness, and I wanted your opinion on it.
Okay.
Since how does it gel well with your perception? Was that okay? So we know scientifically, like plants in general, they have a mycelial network and they communicate with each other, right?
Okay.
And then those in the health and wellness, we're always saying that when you go forest bathing, there's this vibe, like this connection. Like you plants release this pheromone, this chemical naturally, and then when you whiff it in, it actually decreases your cortisol levels, so you get less stress, right? So the theory is that the further away mankind is from nature, that's why you have increased sense of mental health issues, because we are going away from the hive mind. And this is where I joked about it. I was like, does that mean that human beings are like bees? We're searching for the nectar, the ores, the tins, the whatever. We're searching for it, right?
Okay.
But we don't know. Our real purpose is just to wiggle around and get that pollen to the next flower. Maybe the truth of mankind is that we're meant to be seeped in nature. And our main purpose is just to eat fruits and poop it out for trees to grow. Does a bee know it's building hive? Do we know we're building skyscrapers? No, but that's a theory. So when it rolls back to you, like, do you think that's a natural thing? That we are meant to be seeped in nature, and the more we're drifting away, that's where we have a problem.
Oh, certainly. Yeah.
You probably not know about this, but he also wrote a book about sustainable cities. So you asked the right guy.
Oh my God!
which I didn't bring today. I did not the Rexy collection.
Can we talk about the future too, man? Dude, that is it. Okay, but seriously, okay. So back to this current topic before we move to that one.
Yeah.
What do you think? When you are out hiking and you've seen this, and the way
certainly,
you describe the flora and fauna. Well, not flora so far, not fauna yet, but the flowers. You treat it like that.
Oh yeah, certainly. I mean, we are creatures in nature, and I think over the last, our whole dwelling in cities has sort of like disconnected us from nature. And yeah, I think I kind of felt that to a certain extent during the COVID pandemic.
Oh, especially,
where we were not allowed to go hiking or anything, and you just feel that urge to do something, but you just can't fulfill it.
Yeah.
And I reckon the whole idea I like hiking so much is like you spend 5 days in the office facing machines, okay, to a certain extent facing people as well, and you just feel like you're craving for something, and this green space gives you that sense of calm and solace that you can't get in an office.
Yeah.
And I reckon it's not something that I can do every day. I mean, I go hiking every day, but it's something that I need to recharge. My Saturdays are always in the hills. I can't do a Saturday. It's almost like I always tell people that Sundays are in church and Saturdays in the forest. So,
wow.
So that's how important it is to me.
So it's like you're getting in touch with theology and then getting in touch with the biology the day before.
Yeah, it's almost like a bare necessity to me, I reckon.
Is that why you have a really good vibe? Like every time I've heard your name, or anyone has ever mentioned you, or even right now, just being around your aura, like no one has ever had any bad experience with you. It's a very positive, calm vibe.
Okay. I hope so.
I'm sure you have your bad days, but you keep it well hidden.
He's a really nice guy, and he's single.
There you go. Now this is like this is what I love about Freeform Podcast. It could be anything. It could be Tinder. But like, because the thing is, like, for example, if you were to meet somebody like Eugene, you have to get past his initial, impression, because you're actually a really cool, nice guy, right? But it's just that you speak in such a monotone way, not monotone.
I'm a robot.
No, not. But you know what I mean. Like, you give off a vibe that only even for me myself, right?
Yes.
Like the first time I met you, I was like, wow, he's so intelligent. He's probably gonna like bite my head off. But like only after a while, I'm just like, hey, Eugene's actually really cool, you know?
Yeah.
But for you,
has he told you how we met?
I'm
Do you want to
listening.
go?
How
So
Okay, it's a very interesting link. You want to tell it?
Yeah,
or-
yeah, go ahead,
Okay,
go
okay. So, well, I came back from Singapore at the peak of the pandemic, and then I was like looking, exploring things around, and I saw his article. You know, he's talking about this Pantai SN. By the way, it doesn't exist on the south. Yeah, it's just a
Ouch,
big
okay.
mistake that somebody misheard it. You know, the reporter, and it has ever since ESSEN. Now it has become ESEN, right? Then recently it's even get weirder. Somebody has shortened it even more.
so it's a typo?
It's somebody misheard it and published it in a newspaper. That shows how unintentional fake news. And just gets repeated over and over again, and then it just becomes the place is just some random mishearing of
yeah, and
something.
it ended up
interview.
in my article.
What the heck?
Okay.
So I call Ki Beng. Well, now he's a Dr. Ki Beng, the Penang Institute, the editor of Penang Monthly. I said, this doesn't exist and all that. I was very polite, scholarly. I get all the things there. Yes. Then he said, go blame Rexy. No, he didn't say that, but basically said, this is Rexy's email. Go find him.
Oh my god! oh no!
Yes, yes.
You guys
So can you
you
imagine-
guys can't run away from the story. No, all right. So explain more, and then so imagine what?
So can you imagine in the middle of December, you're in a holiday vibe, suddenly you get this email from someone you've never heard of, and there's like this long paragraph on Pantai SN. So I was open. And I remember I replied that email, and soon it just led on to an expedition to Pulau Tikus.
Oh
So,
snap!
and the best part was that email kind of spurred something new, which was before this, Eugene never used to write for the Penang Monthly, and after which we started collaborating.
Yeah.
He would write the history series of say Pulau Tikus, and I
The tag
will
team.
give the
I-
hiking experience.
I
of
was
it.
I never thought of writing it. I didn't have the idea of the book, but he was the one who says that I can introduce you to the sub editor. I went straight to the editor, the main guy, but he introduced me then, and then I started writing regularly.
Oh my, you know what this feels like to me? This feels like the ultimate like villain origin story, man.
And not only that, we went to that island, not Pulau Tikus, the suburb. We went to the island itself, with the keramat and all that, like beacon. And we stayed there for a few hours, had a good chat, climb around,
So you were talking about how intelligent he was. So one of the things I still remember from
my
our
God.
trip to Pulau Pulau Tikus was, I remember the table being dirty, and he was like, oh, if you go up the keramat, there is actually a broom there. You can take that broom down. I was like, how do you know there is a broom there? Then and he told me, oh, I saw it in the photo. I was like, that's the last thing I would notice in a photo. There's a broom there. And right enough, there was
There was a dang broom.
in front of that keramat, and it was his first time there. So that was like a jaw-dropping moment
Yeah,
for me. I
I
was
wouldn't
like,
say-
I'm not going to mess with this guy.
I'm not sure about the
intelligence.
intelligent part, I just, I'm curious. I'm very curious.
Well, your curiosity definitely leads you on amazing paths that not many tread, and that's one thing that drew me in as a friend, and why I really wanted to collaborate with you, and you too.
We do share, all three of us do share something in common.
What?
We are just, do all kind of stuff.
Oh, actually,
Yes.
yeah.
So
you
you're right
guys,
at home here,
and that's what I love about this relationship. As friends, is that I've discovered that it is actually quite okay to be a generalist.
Oh,
it is,
certainly,
yeah. That you can have multiple interests. Because I used to. I don't know how to explain. I used to have like a mental health battle with that. It's like, what am I?
Oh, yeah.
What do I
Actually, when
do?
people ask that, I also have the problem. Like, if you go on the long list and people say, I'll show off.
Yeah.
If you do show
Yes.
short, it's wrong.
Yes.
Yeah.
I have a hard time when people.
By the way,
my-
Mo studied law. I studied law too.
Yeah. So, but I never practiced.
Yes,
You
we-
never practiced.
Yes, but we're not lawyer bureau. We just lawyer tak ada lesson aja.
When you, my mom still looks at me sometimes. It's like, you would have made a great lawyer. I was like, I know. But you're right. We have a background in law, but we diverged into many different directions. But
gaming, what else?
esports, I was radio DJ,
Wow.
TV hosting. I did events. I was a consultant.
But there's a
I
common
also-
denominator to all that. You do a lot of talking, right?
I do.
Yeah.
Right.
No, see, okay, so a little bit of villain origin story. Even when I was a teen, my second youngest sister recently told me during my birthday, she was like, all your life, you've always relied on your words and charm. I was like, I'm not charming. She's like, right. So apparently, like, even as I was a kid,
Okay.
the moment I was able to put my thoughts together, I used it to charm my aunts, parents, and teachers first. So I knew the base. So that's why whenever in school, whenever I got in trouble, right, I had the edge because I had better public relations with all the authorities. So my story always got believed over the other person's because sometimes it's a war of words, and sometimes I am right. The guy did hit me. They go, no, I hit it by accident. It's like, no, he is. But if you have better public relations, you tend to have a better public.
Certainly. Yeah.
So, yes, that's the common denominator, and it's absolutely true. I know there's a moment of silence. I didn't pin drop. Right.
So Rexy has many facets of his life. One of them I think we like to talk about is Penang Hills. Penang Hills is really, something part of your life, right?
Oh yeah, certainly.
Yeah. He's the founder of the Penang Hill Watch. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
God, yes.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
So that started in 2016. So I think it was a lead up from hiking itself. One of the things that I started seeing was like every time so at that particular time I was studying in Sarawak. So I used to only come back to Penang probably about 3-4 months once. And what I noticed was every trip I came back, there was so much more development, and the development was going up the hills. And you feel sad because for so much of your life, you spent every weekend up there. And you go to a hiking trail, and the next thing you know, it's closed because some construction is going on. And that kind of spurred me on to think of what can I do as probably a hiker to save the hills, and what can I do in such a way that I could probably aid the authorities. And that's when I met a few friends in the NGO circle, and we discussed on setting up this Penang Hills Watch. And how it works is it's almost like a citizen's watch, where it's a citizen's watch where the public census reports about like clearing on the hills, and then we channel it to the government. Because sometimes for the public to send something to the government, they always think there's a lot of red tape, a lot of formality which goes into sending a report. And we wanted to be a channel where we as an NGO, we can get the NGO, NGI, we can get the information as well as supply this information to inform the authorities to take action. And yeah, so we've been collaborating in that sense with the MBPP engineering department. So the MBPP engineering department has a sub-department to them called the geotechnical department. And the geotechnical department, what they're in charge of, they, apart from other duties, they also look out for the stability of the hill slopes, and if there's any illegal activity which is going on, they always look out for that. Because when you have a lot of hills, it's an unavoidable consequence that you also have hazards related to those hills, which are things like landslides and soil erosion and whatnot. And hence why, it's so much more important in Penang compared to some other state, because we have the percentage of hill land that we have is much higher, especially on the island compared to other places. Yeah. So basically things like, I go on a hike, I see an area which was probably forest before, suddenly I see a lot of trees being cut. Just take a photo. Either you send, if it's me, I send it straight to, because I'm the NGO co-founder himself. So I'll just send it over to the geotechnical department. If it's the public, they send it to us through Facebook. We have a Facebook page, and then we channel it over to the government. Yeah.
Wow.
So Rexy, maybe for the benefit of our listeners here, how many people are involved, and how do you actually get involved in the Penang Hill Watch?
Oh, I think it's a very small operation.
Okay. Yeah.
It's so there are two co-founders, myself and Dr. Kam Swan Peng. She's a retired scientist, and we kind of met through actually an NGO group. An NGO coalition called the Penang Forum. I honestly had no idea what they were. until like about 2016 when I saw some articles online, and that's how I got involved. And I was like, hey, what can I do to save the hills? And at the same time, she had this idea going on where we can have like a citizens watch, and that kind of morphed into Penang Hills Watch. Yeah.
I like it how you explain that whole story with such calm, as if it's just another day. But do you realize the magnitude of like what you just created?
Okay.
I mean, no, it's a beautiful journey, and I love it. It's amazing. But like in my head, all I can keep thinking is like, oh my God, like the amount of impact that you've done just for the preservation of Penang. Mind you, once upon a time, there were powers that be that wanted to make a casino up there. It was the community, of our. I don't want to say elders. They're like, I feel like they're more like our older brothers and sisters. Like the cool Salmas, the Clement Young, the everybody involved. The Teresa Capoles. They were us, but older. Older. Like back in time, and they've laid down this foundation of change and stuff like that. And you're contributing it to that. You're adding to the fact that there's a community of people actually looking out for these spots outside of the foundations of governance.
Oh yeah. I think our eyes and ears also really matter, because sometimes you can't actually ask. Sometimes we are the ones seeing things happening in life. Probably it's a day after that. Probably the government. I mean, like it's not to tarnish their credibility or anything. In fact, these days the MPPP, they have their drones and whatnot.
Yeah.
We sent in our reports. They've already known it for 1-2 weeks already. But I think us being proactive also shows that we care, and also that there is meaning to what the government is doing to protect the hills. That it's not just us doing a function, but also the people of Penang want our hills to be green and preserved, and hence it adds value to what they do as well.
Absolutely, because I think people, for some strange reason, because I've had experience working in the private sector and in governance as well, people get this weird feeling of separation between them and governance in general. It's either they have an inferiority complex, saying I'm too small to matter, or whatever I believe in is not important. But that's the funny thing is, people don't realize that when you separate all these stories, I'm using the term from Sapiens, like the stories, the hierarchies, the title, we are still at the very core of it a social community where even the most remote member in the corner of our society has an impact, right? And a lot of the successful projects that I've seen have always been grassroots driven. And I'm not saying that, there's nothing that a politician or an agency or a government ministry has done that hasn't been successful. I do. God. It's just that the ones that have the highest likelihood of success and longevity are the ones started by the community. And when you have people like you forming these things, because there's a reason why you have the Registrar of Societies where you can create associations. Okay. There's a reason why you have all these structures. It's for people to band together.
Yeah.
And you are a person that had this idea. And then by virtue of serendipitous universe connecting the dots, you met the right people.
Okay.
And then you formed something like this and created a lasting impact where it's preserved without having a profit-driven or KPI-driven, an NGO. That's what an NGO is supposed to be. It's supposed to fill in the gaps, So, look, how do you get to this point? I know you've had the love from your father bringing you out hiking, but there seems to be like a general makeup of you as a person that think things from a macro altruistic perspective. Where does that come from?
Well, I think to a certain extent, it's also the kind of things that you're exposed to, reading online and whatnot. But I think, I guess it comes with that sense of responsibility that, you are using a resource every week. For example, hiking, the hill, I see it as a resource. And when you go there every week, you have a responsibility to take care of that environment that you kind of use in a sense that you go there. It's servicing you to give you that sense of calmness and that therapy. And I think that sense of responsibility kind of drives me that, hey, if the hill has done so much for me, there's one small part that I can do for the hill. Yeah. And I guess not just Penang Swatch, even my orchid research, I feel that, when it comes to like Penang Hill, people know the forest is important. But what makes the forest so important is the components of it, the animals, the plants, and whatnot. And I think one of the real things that really drove me into orchid research, I only began this very seriously in 2017, 2018 with the habitat's involvement in that BioBlitz. So that's kind of what catapulted me into the direction of orchid research. But how I see it is like I'm adding value to what's known about Penang Hill, and hence in the future, if someone were to come and this is all forest, okay, let's just build a casino as you were saying, they would know that, hey, this is not just any other forest. There were probably 180 over species of orchids, so many mammals. And your act of doing that is displacing that whole biodiversity in order to meet the needs of a few, which is not even a need to begin with. It's more of the fantasy of a few. Yeah.
So how many orchids species you said were there?
So at the moment, we know about 180 species, but definitely more than that.
Yeah. I was at the book launch at the Habitat. Yeah. It says here there are 50. So you're still a lot.
Oh, so this book
Yeah.
only features 50,
50,
So I was only able to, so out of the 180 species, I've only been able to photograph probably about 90 or so species.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So the thing is, it's still a long journey. To see all 180, maybe it's possible, maybe it's not, because some have already gone probably missing on the hill. And it's not due to just human activity. Plants also tend to have a pattern where they migrate towards a certain area, meaning that
what?
they may be found here 100 years ago, but 100 years down the road, maybe they are in a different place.
Wait, is it because like it's moved by entities like birds, bees, moving the seeds?
Okay, so for orchids, what's interesting is like pollination happens by probably a third party, as I would call it, like a bee or bird or something. But when it comes to seed dispersal, is usually by wind, because orchid seeds are really small. So when you're dispersed by seed, the thing is you can go over a wide range, and hence why you get a lot of species which are found in, say, Peninsular Malaysia, over in Thailand, over in Borneo.
Yeah.
But if you were to look at other plants which are probably dispersed by land animals, probably monkeys or something, the distribution tends to be in a small area, because it's only where the monkey goes, that's where the seeds get dispersed to, It doesn't go beyond that radius.
This book contains a lot of beautiful photos.
Oh,
man.
thank you.
Yeah. You took all this yourself?
Oh, yeah, most of it. Myself and my co-author.
Wow.
Yeah.
So back to the orchids.
Yeah.
So it's not dispersed by land animals. It's
No,
dispersed by
it's
wind.
not. Yeah, by
and
wind.
the dispersion is?
Sorry?
How does it compare to? Because if it was by like say a troop of monkeys, it would be most likely in a circle, almost like a border, like around there, right?
Yeah. So with the wind, I mean, like where the wind brings you to, and if that habitat is suitable, the conditions are suitable, they can grow there as well.
So are you saying that it goes cross continent, cross?
Oh yeah, you have some species which are cross continents, So in Penang Hill, we actually have one species which is pan-tropical. Pan-tropical meaning that it can be found all across the tropics, be it in Africa or even, so across continents, as you say, Yeah. So I think, but one of the things about orchids is because their seeds are so small, they usually don't have an endosperm. So the endosperm is, remember in standard 4 or standard 5 that we had the science experiment where, we get the kacang hijau, then after that, we germinate the kacang hijau in
Let
some
it
tissue.
grow. Oh,
so
back.
if you notice, like when the seed actually starts growing, there are two very hard kind of leaves. I used to think those are leaves, but those are actually the endosperms.
Oh,
so
snap.
those are almost like the power-packed nutrients for the plant to actually germinate. So most orchids do not have that. And the thing is, when they actually land, and usually one orchid seed pod usually contains few thousand seeds. And you would think that, if there's one seed pod, few thousand seeds, there are probably a million seeds on like a whole flower stalk. Because if there are like 100 flowers on that flower stalk and all become seed pods, you would think, there's going to be a million plants. But it doesn't work that way because they don't have that endosperm. Wherever they land, they need a third party again to kind of feed them. So this third party in that sense is a fungi. A fungi will infect the seed and then it actually provides the nutrients. So of that, probably more than 1,000 seeds that get dispersed, those seeds have to land in a place where the fungi is in order to germinate.
Oh my
and
God.
hence why they manufacture and pump out so many seeds, so that at least one of that few thousand seeds which are there would germinate.
Is it correct to say they have a symbiotic relationship, or is it just one way?
I think the relationship when it starts germinating is more one way. One way in the sense that the fungi actually provides all the nutrients for it. So it starts off in that direction, but once they start growing, then they become photosynthetic.
What does the important role orchids play in the ecosystem?
Well, I would think, so if we were to look at the bigger picture, I mean, like in Peninsular Malaysia, for example, there are certain species which are found in like montane areas. And the thing is, they're only restricted to that montane area. And now with like temperature...
Mountain means in a mountain.
Mountain area.
Yeah.
So the thing is, if they are found at 2,000 meters, they are only at 2,000 meters. And what you get with like temperature rise is you have temperature rise across elevation, right? So areas which used to be maybe 21 Celsius are now probably in the range of 23, and they're not suited to that environment. And the thing is, they get pushed higher and higher. But once you reach the top of the peak, you have nowhere else to go. You are kind of like pushed out.
You're limited by the altitude.
Yeah, limited by the altitude. And one is like, that is an indication. It is like a crucial indicator, those species, of the effects of temperature rise on biodiversity. And if you were to look at it, why it's important in nature in general, it's also a food source, I mean, like there are so many species which actually has nectar which feeds the bees and
So, when I go out with Rexy and you think every flower is, it's just a flower, right? He's very specific. He'll correct you. I think this is what we think an orchid looks like. But if you look through the book, that's the amazing diversity. I think we'll put that in the notes later.
So it comes out in various
all
different
kinds. Look at
shapes.
this one.
Like, what? That is so alien.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a tiger orchid. That's the heaviest orchid in the world.
There's no particular pattern of what an orchid is. The diversity is amazing from this book.
And I think what's so amazing of Penang, I mean, like we have so little forest left, but we can still lay claim that we still have the heaviest orchid in the world in our jungles. You go to the Amazon, you don't see the largest species. I mean, the heaviest species, because this is something that we've been endowed with,
Wow.
And
You remember Hidden Gems? We did it on the very developed hill. Yeah. I was there with him doing some scouting, and then suddenly it's like in the bush. He says like, "I found a rare orchid." It's like, that's amazing. It's just like how I found the broom in the Keramat. He says you can see the orchid.
Well, it's obviously
like
that you guys have similar talents, but like focus. It's like Aquaman and Superman. Like one flies, but in the ocean.
It looks all green, the jungle. Then he's like, it's not big. It's tiny. It's tiny. Then he says it's really
that
rare.
small. It's just a tiny.
Oh
little-
yeah. So to give a scale, the largest orchid, the heaviest orchid, it can weigh about 2,000 kilograms. Come up to 1 to 2,000 kilograms, and the flowers are usually about 10 cm. If you were to compare to probably one of the smallest, we can't really pinpoint the smallest as such in Penang. The whole plant can fit within that 10 cm, and the flowers are probably a few not even 1 centimeter across. So that's the diversity that you get here in Penang with as little forest that you have. And if you were to like go into Peninsular Malaysia, it's a huge variety. in terms of color, size, and form and pattern.
So the thing is, you're saying that, like, okay, our orchids are a lot more dense. We have a lot more going on in a single square feet.
Oh yeah, if you
Theoretically.
were to compare to like a European country or something, yeah, certainly.
And then also at the same time, you're explaining how when orchids travel by wind, there's a certain. It's not as simple. That's the thing. It's not as simple as people think. It's not seed, go, ground, grow.
Oh yeah,
Right.
Yeah,
It's like you have to have this. Then you have the what's it called? The sperm pods. Ectosperm. What's it called?
endosperm.
Endosperm. Sorry,
Yeah.
the endosperm comes out. Then the fungus has to.
No. So the endosperm is for plants which don't rely on this relationship.
Oh my
So
God, okay.
most orchids don't have the endosperm. Yeah.
and they rely on the fungus.
They rely on the fungus.
So
So,
there
like a
has to-
third party, it has to land exactly where that fungus is.
And this fungus has to grow in certain conditions where it can grow on
so actually, I mean, like we tend to think of fungus as the mushrooms around, but fungi is actually all around us. Especially in the forest. If there's decaying wood, even like living things, there is fungi.
Wait. So we're constantly breathing in fungus all the time.
You could say so, but it's not something that it's
Probably some there right now.
Oh, okay. Oh my god! Now I feel conscious about like I have this thing like when I'm on a couch I have to like cross my I don't know why, but wow. Okay, so
it's all over in especially. I'm not sure about the air, but it should be. I mean, like it disperses its spores
the
and whatnot.
pollen or whatever.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So that means that an orchid has to have a very specific set of conditions.
Yeah.
And could that be applied to plants in general? Yeah.
Not to all plants,
Not
but
to all
yeah.
plants, okay.
I think this is a good part where we ask him, Rexy, why orchids? Of all plants and flower, why orchids?
Okay.
Yeah,
Tell
why
us
orchids?
Also, this is a very old story. I remember, I was always very interested in plants. Also because of my dad and my grandma who used to live with us. I mean, she has passed on, but the thing was, we always had a lot of plants, and there was this one uncle of mine who realized that, I'm coming over. I like plants, so let's just go to the nursery and get a few plants. So he got a few plants, and there were 2 orchids. And I remember he was in KL, driving back to Penang. I was in the back seat looking at the orchid, and it almost seemed like a person with his tongue sticking out, looking at me. Almost like first love at that sight itself, And one of the features for most orchids is you have that. It's called a lip. It's a very specifically shaped petal, which looks like a tongue, like a person with his tongue sticking out. And I think that's something that I don't see in other flowers, where you have something which is like a person-like figure in the flower. Wow. And that captivated me. And I think that's where I really started my journey, So it started from the garden, and just about in the middle of that journey, I reckon that's when I started hiking. And while hiking, looking around, I realized, hey, my garden plants have jungle cousins as well.
So you see these plants as almost like how people see a pet. Like you've sort of personified that animal as your guardian, random whatever people project onto their
So
pets.
this reminds me of something that a friend on Penang Hill told me. She joined me for a hike, and she was like, "Hey, Rexy, the way you are looking at orchids is like you are visiting your old friends on the hill, because you know where they are, and every time you go for a hike, you go and check on them."
And the fun thing is, I'm not saying it in a way to be. I know I cut you off, but what I really is important for me to explain to you. I'm not saying it in a bad way. I have a point.
Okay.
Don't worry, but continue. Yeah, you're saying.
So in a sense that these are like your old friends. You just every time you go on a trail, you know where those orchids are, and you go and check on them, see their flowering, how they're doing. And I have to say that I didn't have the words for that at that time. But what she said was exactly what I felt, It's like meeting my old friends on Penang Hill. They don't talk, but are always concerned about how they do. But I'm not sure whether they are concerned about me, but, that journey is just about meeting all these plants, seeing and, seeing how they
I think what we can gather here is Rexy seems like what he does is always cohesive, like he hiking, you know, your Penang Hill watch.
Yeah.
You're already there. You can watch the things. Then you got your orchid. It all seems to be, you know, a grand plan. You know.
Yeah, it's like the common denominator.
yeah.
You know, but no, that's what's beautiful about like how you guys met. You guys are similar, but like it's like wizards, but one is blue, yellow, whatever. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you know, you're like various versions of the same genre of human beings, where you are explorers, adventurers. You know, back in the day, yeah, be more Renaissance man, but like you both had that same vibe, except that pointed in different directions. Yours more biological. Yours is more archive based. You know.
Oh no, that's archive is just a recent thing.
I mean, what I meant was like more research.
I think what we share in common is that we are engineers. I'm an engineer too. I used to be a chief technology officer.
So you're a lawyer, engineer?
I'm not a lawyer. That's illegal. You should know that too.
Okay, no, I'm sorry.
License.
Sorry, you were a pre-law major.
Yes.
Oh my God.
Well, I think we do have another common denominator.
Yeah.
To get to the places that we want to be it to see orchids or your historical remains or whatever it is, you still have to hike.
I think the part is the
that's a
evidence
journey.
based. There are also, you know, people who just nothing wrong with that, telling a story or that, but I think we go a little bit further. We were evidence based. We try to actually.
No, you guys really go out and search.
You too. Penang and Jabs got to say that too. Yeah.
Well, that's probably why we're having this podcast. But here's the okay. So I have two separate sets of theories. If anybody's like this is not fact. This is theoretical, right? So there are two theories that I want to present, and this is very interesting. Okay, one, I can't remember of the paper, but they actually came out with movies. The Man Who Stared at Ghosts, starring George Clooney and stuff like that. So the movie was based on an actual paper written in the 60s about the U.S. military, they were exploring all these gurus, you know, because the 60s was filled with like flower power and, you know, that kind of stuff. So they studied it. Long story short, most of it was hard to prove or like hocus pocus, except one. And that is energies.
Okay.
Right. So that's why when you have somebody who is a communication specialist, right, they would have various tests to see if the person. That's why if you notice, you have some friends who are really good with devices and some friends who are just tali pakai at all, like cannot use at all, right?
Okay.
So that goes down to your energies. Very different from health and wellness and meditation, where like, you know, chakras and cheese and stuff like that. But it is. Let me put it this way: if the public doesn't believe it, American military does. So go figure, right? That's one. Second one was how. Oh man, I gotta write down. I wish I had something to Google. So there was actually correlation between the animal kingdom, like, you know, how ants, monkeys, and population in general, right? When you look at the human species and you spread it out, right? There's a reason why certain people are the way they are, because we're so accustomed to looking at things, courtesy of Western culture, as an individualistic thing. You are one person, you are just your family, and then maybe the most is your clan. But we don't see ourselves as a singular hive mind, that everybody birthed, created, or has a certain specialty is meant to be like how ants, right? If it's closest to a threat, they will produce more soldier ants. And that's a biological hive mind will, right? So the theory was like, that's the reason why you have people coming out as, you know, the transgender thing is another one where there's a reason why that is, or, you know, when it comes to sensuality, but it also comes down to physicality. Okay. If you live in a more tribal place, you tend to have more athletic builds and, or if it's depending on your terrain, right? So what I'm trying to say is I have a feeling that maybe there is a reason why all of us have these things, because you have those who are normal individuals. Well, subjective. What is normal, right? But what I meant was average, within the average range. But then you have these people who are high performers, and they all have certain set of idiosyncrasies, whether they be men or women. And I have a feeling that as a society, we have yet to put a value. We have GDP, but GDP is even the person who created the GDP says that it's not an accurate way of showing the wealth of a country. We have no way to monetize or quantify nature in terms of monetary value. We know that it's important, but we have yet to quantify it. We've yet to quantify matriarchal contributions to society, meaning those who became homemakers, and the patriarchal who participate in that, homemaking in general. Also the value of historical sites, unless it's been turned into a tourism asset. So what I'm trying to say is, like, you know, maybe all the things that you've discovered in your life too, it all points into maybe a different way of thinking in regards to our civilization, our cultural makeup, our community makeup. I have a feeling that at one point, if we roll the times of history long enough, we found out that maybe our original civilizations were based more on nature or as the cosmos, And since the Industrial Revolution of the 18th century, I have a feeling we lost that. Because the first one, I would always say, was the 7th century Mughal India. They were the first one to have the Industrial Revolution, then it was deindustrialized, and then that's why the world is so messed up. Because you have Europe, one of the highest warring sections of the world, a culture predisposed around purely war because of their structure. And I'm not saying it's bad, it's just history, as opposed to us, the Indians, Chinese, those within Thailand, the Nusantara, what used to be Majapahit, we were very trade-based. They were of the land, we were of the sea, chai and tea. So I think our cultures, if you notice, and I've looked in Sungai Batu and stuff like that, a lot of our earlier cultures were animalistic, were in the forest. We respected a tree because it had a spirit in it,
Yeah.
So I think us as a culture, we've lost that. And I think that's why a lot of us are feeling a little bit lost.
I have a different point of view about that. It's more like, humanity, it's just growing into a different stage, the child stage, angsty teenager state. We probably passed the angsty teenager state.
Yeah.
There's the glimpses of, reaching adulthood. But all those growing pains, now you have 80-year-olds with attitude problems. But as a whole, violence has actually reduced. There's
100%.
Yes.
100%. Yeah. I mean, if you compare it to but what I'm trying to say is that is like human civilization as a whole, right?
I think sometimes history, we have a recency bias because you really don't want to live back then. Although you don't have passports, basically, if somebody thinks that you're not part of the tribe, you're doomed. That's
the thing that I was trying to get across. The idea of nationalism. I mean, in the tours, and I don't know if I mentioned it in the podcast, but like the idea of nationalism was a very new idea. We think it's been that way since forever, but you're right. At any one point, say we both lived in 17th, 18th century, right? If I could group together a big enough number of people, I could create my own kingdoms, and a lot of the civilizations were created that way. One singular person had just a huge family.
and nowadays, we got certain forms of it. We have forgotten one chunk of the human experience was slavery.
Oh my God! Yes, that's also another thing. Like okay, I'm not demeaning anybody's personal experience, but like people don't realize how common slavery was.
It's quite recent. Even my grandma's generation, they still remember some of it. It's not that long ago.
Yeah, absolutely. The thing is because it was such a normal thing when when you had war of conquest and you dominated another valley or you dominated another territory, what do? You actually enslaved everybody. That was a normal practice. Your prisoners of war were actual money-making collateral because then you can ransom them back to whoever. That's one of the reasons you have the Chinese diaspora. When the Qing dynasty took over the Ming dynasty, what they did was they kidnapped all the women, and the husbands had to buy them back, and then they shaved the sides of the women's head and then tattooed the amount that the husband paid for. So not only did they steal your wife, they gave her back, defiled her beauty, and also made you drop face.
Rexy, I think this is related in a way to the resources, natural resources. Orchids are really beautiful. Okay, definitely. I remember you told me too. There's orchid poaching. Can you share a little bit what that is?
Orchid poaching.
Oh, I think that also starts off in a sense that you love the plant so much that you want to bring it back home with you.
Oh no!
So it's like one. So there is a fine line, between love and being an obsession. And I think orchid poaching is where it crosses that boundary between love and obsession, where you're so obsessed with the plant that you want it at home. And this used to be very common. In fact, it's still happening at the moment. Basically, so let me just narrate some examples. In fact, it used to happen in Penang in the 19th century, right up to, in fact, the 1990s as well. 1990s, early 2000s. I think it's still happening, but we just don't have data. But anyway, so orchid poaching, at that time it was, this whole definition of poaching was never there. It was just orchid collecting. Because remember how difficult I told you germinating seeds on your own was? Hence, the only way where you can get a new orchid is to get something from the wild. So, to get orchids from the wild, can you imagine if you are in Victorian Europe and you like something from South America or from Malaysia?
Which happened a lot.
Yeah, certainly a lot. In fact, our species are more showy. The tropical species are more showy than the ones in Europe. And there was this great demand for plants from tropical countries. And they used to dispatch people to go and hunt for them and poach. So that terminology was never there. It was collect. And when they go in to collect, they almost work like vacuum cleaners, Every single plant or orchid that they see, it is identifiable to someone who is a collector simply by virtue of you seeing, and it's almost like your mind works as an image processing capability. You take back everything, and some people even were obsessed to the point that you don't have just one collector going in. You have many collectors going in because the demand was so huge. So in order to prevent other collectors from going in and taking more of the plant, they would either burn off whatever which was there or urinate on the plants to kill them off, so that the next collector, when he comes, he sees the plants are all died off.
It's like kids throwing tantrum, like if you can't have it, nobody can have it.
Yeah.
Hold on. So when you urinate on an orchid or plants in general, you kill the plant?
It depends on the plant. If it's a tree or something, maybe it doesn't. Okay. But for a herbaceous orchid, maybe of a certain size, usually it's just too much concentrated nutrient at that same time.
Oh, it's too nutritious.
I get it. It's just like too much of a good thing. It's like, it's like how too much water is actually poison to people and stuff like that.
So it was like that obsession fed this whole industry of poaching. And right up to the 90s, I've heard this from people who were in Penang Hill. There used to be people who come up on Penang Hill with this huge gunny sacks, and Penang Hill used to be one of the, it's not an endemic species of Penang Hill, but something which Penang Hill was synonymous for, which was the Penang Hill slipper orchid, Penang slipper orchid. It's actually not even native to Penang itself. It's found throughout.
So you mean they're actually endemic species that only live on Penang Hill?
There is one.
Wow.
For the very reason that I was saying, because it's dispersed by wind, orchids tend to be... Yeah, but this Penang slipper orchid was so synonymous with Penang Hill, where, you have 18th, 19th century travelers who come into Penang and go up the hill saying that there used to be huge, valleys filled with this slipper orchids. And if you go in today, you barely even see. It probably takes you to break a leg in order to see a Penang slipper orchid, because they are only found in areas where people can't go, because wherever they were found in areas which are easily accessible, they've been poached.
Were they valuable?
Oh, they were. So what these people used to go in with the gunny sacks to take, they would take them out and then they will ship them abroad, and they will get a premium price for all those plants, and that kind of decimated the population on Penang Hill. Yeah.
Well, I feel like this story, the orchid poaching, is a perfect example of, because we live in Penang or Malaysia in general. Locals don't really. People would always ask me, what is life growing? What is like growing up in the States? Because obviously, I grew up there. But I would always tell people it's not as amazing as you have it in your mind. In fact, the amazing part of the world is here.
Yeah.
Right here, Southeast Asia. That's like the adventure of the whole world. But we're living in Adventureland and not realizing how amazing it is. We're constantly looking on social media to cheese. It's like, come on.
It's even more interesting because it's the Straits of Malacca. It's like for centuries, it's like the waterway.
Still today, it is the second most busiest shipping lane.
All the culture converge. Yeah.
In the world, next to the Suez Canal, and that was made on purpose, so to circumvent the Malacca Straits. But you get what I mean. It's like we're in this location which is like really amazing. We have orchids that are worth, I'm gonna assume, hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions, right? Growing in our backyard. You have people going in poaching in to the point where we have to fence off these orchids to protect them, right? Isn't that enough to show people that actually, if you do things right and you focus on the right things. You develop programs like yours, the Penang Hill Watch or preservation work, or with Puan Haja Yunus that day from tourism, where she's developed geotourism and archaeotourism programs. You know, maybe we're seeing a resurgence of it now because people like you and I, you know, we grew up with extra amounts of information or access to information that wasn't available before. And then maybe that is the development of Malaysia post-COVID. Because right now, you know, I mean, I just read an article, I think it was in the Star or New Street Times, saying that the numbers of tourists were still pre-COVID. As horrible as I think COVID was for the tourism industry, I still firmly believe that every forest fire is essential to grow the next generation, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's what happened. We had a forest fire of tourism, and I think the next evolution of Malaysian tourism is very much linked to the natural, the health and wellness, and the historical.
Yeah.
Especially Penang So with this biosphere. The pandemic really brought people together. I mean, we got a friend, right? Heng. He got him into hiking, and now he's basically going everywhere looking for those 19th century trigonometric stones and map all of it. And people get involved. So many stories of people never hiked. And suddenly they realize that, thank goodness we have hills. You know, you get stuck in a city where you only have buildings. And you get stuck for months. You go nuts.
Yeah.
But this one you can just go to the beach, the mountains. And,
You know, or people complain about the heat, but do they know what it feels like to be in grey? Like, you know, if you if you live in London, it's mostly grey. You know,
it's pretty flat.
it's pretty flat. It's very grey, and
You can't just feel like I want to climb up the mountain.
Yeah,
and,
you know, I mean, people say, "Oh, it's cold." It's like it's cold, but it's also very depressing. Hence,
And
why
wet.
the British have their own sense of humor, which is more sarcasm than, you know, it's the sun. You know, but
I'm not sure this related to your Penang Hill Watch. Other than orchid poaching, do you also monitor other kinds of poaching? If I'm not mistaken, we have sandalwood here, right, in Penang too.
Oh yeah. Not.
Is it
Agarwood.
Agarwood, yeah. It's used in incense in Arabic culture, and it's also super expensive.
wait, what?
Gaharu
What?
actually grows here,
Garu, yeah.
and they're
Really?
poachers. Yeah,
Because, oh man, I can't remember. It's something like frankincense, where you have to find this particular bush in the.
fungus again, right? It has to be infected in a
Yeah,
particular
so
way.
they cut the tree down and then get it infected with a certain kind of fungi.
Is that why some incense makers, they would tell me that they would go on hikes because to get like what do they call it? Dharma or some resin or something?
no, Damar is
Damar
different.
is a different thing.
Different
Yeah.
thing.
Oh, okay.
That's a
Yeah,
different
yes,
thing.
yes.
So that is sort of sustainable because you're not killing the tree.
Yeah.
The tree just gets the resin out on its own, and you just collect the resin.
Agarwood is almost worth its weight in gold. The biggest one is cultivated in Vietnam nowadays. They've purposely infected it. But I think ours is wild ones, and they're very rare.
So the only way you can get the agarwood, what is valuable in the agarwood, is to actually cut down the tree.
Oh my
Kill the
God.
tree.
Okay.
For listeners, agarwood is that smell you get when you go into the Arabic restaurant and all that. They like to burn it. Yeah.
Oh, that's. I thought
yeah.
that was frankincense. Or something like that.
It's one of it.
So-
It's very
so-
valuable.
So, do we want or do we have an industry for like agro, or is it like how precious is this ecosystem of like rare agro?
Well, I mean, like it's something found in our region,
Yeah.
including Penang. But in terms of poaching, so it was quite prevalent probably about 10 years ago. I mean, like the paper started reporting about people going in.
In the hills behind Tanjung Bunga. I
Oh my
remember,
wow,
yeah.
it's really close. Barely 5 minutes away from where we're recording.
Yeah, yes.
And they used to come in armed as well, you know. And
It's that valuable.
it's that valuable. And you know, these syndicates which go in, they come in armed as well in order to go.
What the heck?
And it was the hikers who kind of started reporting this to the press and also to the officials. Yeah.
Wow.
But at the moment, I'm not sure. It's either it's too depleted or probably Penang being a small place, they don't see a benefit in getting the revenue here. They rather go to a bigger forest and poach them.
That's,
In a way, Penang's size saved itself because the British wanted to build a shipbuilding area. Then they discovered that there's not enough timber. Might as well use it as a sanitarium. the size itself is good. If you're too big, then you can devastate the whole thing.
Yeah.
So it's self-limiting in a way.
I don't know. I just kind of feel that like Penang was just a place where people got fresh water and extra troops. I mean, even James Lancaster, when he first came here, he just got a whole bunch of orang asli and raided ships.
Marcus Landon in his latest book, Pastoral Port, he was at the launch. He said that he sees Penang as a pit stop, like a gas station on the way to the other side.
It probably was. Considering how close it was to Sungai Merbuk, because Sungai Merbuk at one time was the highway, transporting metal from here to the Middle East and the rest of the world and stuff like that, or to India, because India was 1/4 of manufacturing in 17th century. But like what I'm trying to get at is like, you have this sort of like awakening to history and all these resources, and you have so many things that are valuable that syndicates are going in and people have to report them. We have so much of these. Okay, I'm going to try to phrase this as well as I can. Okay. And I want everybody listening and you guys to know that I'm saying it with love. I'm literally not pointing fingers, but I really genuinely feel, and it's shameful for me to say because I feel like I'm a benefit of it, but I feel like in the 80s and 90s, Malaysia went too hard into the service industry, right? And we've sort of alienated a profession which is very important, which is like the farmer, the one who grows, the food. Because a lot of what we do now is that we import from Thailand meats, eggs, and stuff like that. Majority, there are local farmers, but like how often can you find them, right? But generally, as an industry, we're importing and then marking up. We're middlemen. So we don't have food security in a sense. And that was because we went really hard into service. Everybody became more of like, you have to get that degree, you become more of a salesman, you talk, you produce, right? But when it comes to farmers or growers in general, or people who preserve weeds, seeds, or freshes, incense, and herbs, they seem to be niche. And I find that's kind of weird. When you have a backyard literally filled with millions of ringgits worth of things, right? And no ecosystem to preserve it, wouldn't it make sense to, just like how we did for durians, we found a way to harvest the wild thing and then make it into an industry? There's so much squandered potential. The reason why I think people think that there's no money in something because they're trying to sell it to their neighbor. No point. You and your neighbor has the same toy. You both have the same, like wood. You have the same herbs growing. Like, why would you want to,
I think that agriculture here is more of a mindset thing because people usually think of self-sustenance at small scale.
Yeah, or doomsday planners.
Yeah, but this thing here, you have to adopt technology, and the technology adoption for agriculture is very low here. We're not very productive, although we are blessed with so much resources. But you need the right techniques too. I got a friend who is a mechatronic expert. After he retired, he tried to get an automated farm, the full cycle aquaculture thing and all that. That's rare because most of the time people just get cheap labor. Sometimes we fall into the cheap labor trap.
Yeah.
We just get unskilled labor and just make them work on the plantations. It's no different from slavery back then.
True.
But it doesn't produce, that kind of efficiencies if you adopt technology.
Yeah.
No, like Netherlands is an example. You won't think of it as agriculture. I mean, but they are agricultural powerhouse because they use technology.
Yeah.
They produce a lot of stuff for land that's basically reclaimed.
Yeah.
So technology is a multiplier. We're not using that very well here.
Oh yeah, of course. I mean, I'm not gonna like discount the advances in certain parts of the world, but also have to like realize that a lot of the ones who are ahead of the curve, they tend to be the ones who had their own empires, who were colonialists themselves, or had a really messed up history in Europe, while the rest of the world, Southeast Asia included, we're literally like 50, 60 years in from like being independent ourselves. So we're new.
I think this is related to what you say, the alienation part. Why people don't want to get agriculture on that, because it's so far away from nature now.
Yeah.
You're so far from the supply chain. You don't even know where your food comes from.
Yeah.
So I think this is the pandemic may have made people more realize, to go back to nature, and that's one good thing to realize. Nature is important.
Oh yeah, 100%. And also,
and nature is powerful. Don't mess with nature.
Absolutely. That's why it was in great reverence with the ancient civilization. But also at the same time, I'm of the mind that I think that we also have to look introspectively as a civilization and realize that we actually have not all, but most of the information that we need, if not more. Because you're right, there are certain processes and things to learn, but then those are also the things that are facilitating large problems, like the amount of pesticide using in food, creating like. I am not a doctor, but I wish I could start a research and find out that why is there more allergies in the West than there are in the Southeast Asia. And I do firmly believe it's the method of harvest, is the pesticides or whatever they're using, all that come together. Theoretical, I'm saying, if I could find a research, I would. But what I think we should also look into is that, yes, some things we can learn and adopt technology, but I think we should also more procreatively make our own systems. Because, like, for example, all the weeds that I just mentioned about, you see them in every Malay shop, like as ulam, right? Why isn't that an industry, And then right now, as much as we want to demean ketum and make fun of people who do ketum in the States, right? Ketum is starting to grow in trend. And there are actually people looking for ketum tablets, and it's considered a supplement. All I'm saying is that I think, we've been looking a little bit beyond our borders a little too much. I think if we look back in, every scourge has an opportunity.
Maybe we can ask Rexy, since you wrote a book about sustainable cities, what the key takeaway you want people to know from, sustainable cities? What do you think is the basic ingredients of?
I think one of the things that writing the book is also as much as governmental action.
Who was your co-author?
The main author was Murali. I was his co-author.
Murali what?
Murali Ram. So he was with Think City at that time. Right now he's not with Think City, but he's actually also in the sustainability line. But at the time of writing this book.
Go ahead. The book, the key.
So I think one of the things that a lot of people tend to see that governmental action is necessary. Of course, that's important. But there are also lifestyle changes that you can take in order to play your part. Because when at an individual level, something that you were talking about just now, sometimes we tend to degrade the role of an individual in addressing a certain situation. But individuals, when they act collectively in a certain direction, they are already pushing for change. And when an individual takes that decision, it's also in a sense that you are also giving that pressure to that governmental body in a sense that, hey, I'm doing my part. You also have to address climate change and challenges like this within that governmental perspective. If we go in the trajectory that, government has to switch off the lights, do this, do that, what is the accountability on the side of the individuals? Because something of a global scale like climate change, everyone has a part that they can play. And another point that I kind of agreed with what you were saying about agriculture and whatnot just now is, one of the key ingredients I think we can learn from our northern neighbor, Thailand. Thailand is actually an agricultural powerhouse. And I think it's the direction that their leadership took to see agriculture as being an important part of their society and economy, and hence so much emphasis into technology as well as diversification. So if you go into a Thai, let's say a souvenir shop, the kind of things that you can get from just coconut itself, the diversity of products that they've made from just the coconut itself, it will just blow your mind. So I think that direction spurs creativity, and that is, I think, something that perhaps we also should
and
start
the thing
thinking.
Is, I'm not talking about forever maintaining a farmer in a shack kind of image. I meant properly done, well thought out industries. I'm talking about I would love to see one day, you have this, maybe even on our podcast, we're interviewing somebody who's like, oh, what do you do? I'm the CEO of agricultural production of ulam, internet. And then you look at, they have factories, they have research and stuff like that, because I think a lot of that is lacking. We have all of these, but we're currently relying on those who are professors at USM and doing their theses, right? Which is not wrong. They should. But it's a wide topic, and universities are wide, hence university. But I meant specifically focused industries where they are looking into it, researching it, having levels and requirements and standards. Standards. those things I think we need to be developed, because I think, like I said, we went service industry, we went good. I'm not saying it's bad. We created cities, but we did it under the assumption that there will be a huge bulk of people still left behind to be farmers, right? I'm saying let's refocus that. There's no such thing as nobody's being left behind. We have to reinvent everything, and do it our own way. And I think COVID is a perfect opportunity, the perfect reset button. We're in the reset mode.
I think we're almost short of time.
Oh,
yes.
again.
But maybe
Oh my God.
I think one topic, I think before
Okay.
we leave this wonderful conversation, this book here, Peaks and Parks. Rexy, maybe you can suggest to those who want to get into seeing the beauty of Penang, which should they start with?
Okay, so it really depends on what your intention is. So peaks and parks, of course, from the size itself, it's not something that you can put in your hiking bag. But if you're more of an armchair hiker, I think this is something that gives you the experience. And it covers actually both Penang Island, the mainland, and something which is not often talked about, which are the isles around Penang. In fact, there are 7 or 8 isles, depending on what your definition of an isle is, around Penang. And some of these are actually covered in this book. And it's a good way for an armchair hiker to explore the trails while not leaving the comfort of your sofa and whatnot. But at the same time, it's also something that you can use as a reference where you read through, then you go for the hike. Whereas the Seberang Perai Trails book, that's also good for armchair hikers. A lot of photos and whatnot, very colorful. But at the same time, this is also designed in such a way where you can just chuck it into your hiking bag and bring it along for your hikes. Just like what I did almost 20
So you
years
actually
ago.
designed it on purpose.
It was meant
This
to
is
be
very
small.
pocket. I think this is the first book ever, right?
It's Seberang Perai Trails.
Because
I
there have
reckon,
been other hiking books about the island pipe. I think that's the first one on the mainland, which is often neglected in a lot of Penang books.
How much is one?
This is just 20.
You can't have it. That's autograph. Go get your own.
Oh no! I mean, I'm buying one because you know
Just
what?
kidding.
It's actually it just
Yeah.
clicked for me that how useful these books are. That I could actually go on these, because I only know like 2 Bukit Jambul and the Penang.
Oh, yeah.
So I gotta know more.
For a start, an easy one where you can see a beautiful view. Let's say you're on the island, just beginners. What would it be?
Well, there used to be one that was very easily accessible.
Bukit Hijau. Oh, yes,
Bukit Hijau.
wonderful view.
But I reckon right now there's a project running through. So if you were to ask me, I think Air Hitam Dam is a good one to do for people who are beginner. You just start off near the temple, just below the Kek Loksi temple, and you walk up, and the views are beautiful.
And I think this neighborhood, that Mount Erskine or Pearl Hill is another one.
Pearl Hill is
It's
another
not in the book yet, right?
Yeah.
That's an easy one.
I reckon what's good about Penang is like whichever little town you stay in, there's a nice little hill for you to go and
that's
hang
the
out.
best part.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we are at the end.
Yes, we are at the end. Dude, thanks for actually dropping by and making time to be part of this podcast.
Thank you so much. It was an honor.
No, it's reverse, man. Like, I thank you so much for opening up. Because today I, on a personal level, got a very different perspective, and I'm glad that people like you exist, and that your interests exist. That you can teach other people who may not have the same experiences as you and see things through your perspective, which is awesome.
I say before we leave, if anybody wants to buy the book, where do they get it?
Erica Books?
Erica Books is one place where you can get all three.
Is it in Hikayat?
I reckon it's in
I saw some in
Hikayat.
Black Kettle.
Yeah, I reckon these places where they have
Fine
a lot
books.
of fine books.
See,
as
that's
you
also
call it.
another thing. There's only like 3 bookshops in all of Penang that does like really locally published stuff. But that's where a lot of the national historical treasure, inside those books. Yours included.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Thanks a lot. And it's a wrap.
Thank you, everybody.